right, it is 6:30, so we're gonna try to start as close to on time as we can because I'm gonna need that time. And plus, we got a nice clock back there. It's 6:30. It's 75 degrees. It's September 13th. I mean, just all kinds of good information. Do you think if I get in trouble up here, it'll have an answer for me? Like that's kind of what I'm really hoping for. All right, we got a sheet going around, so if you need one, Temple can get it to you. All right, it's good to see everybody here tonight. We want to welcome you to this class. Class didn't even get started before somebody was, you are going to make this easy, right? So let's just talk about that for a minute. No, I'm not going to make it easy. I hope I will make it easier. And the difference is, Revelation is not an easy book. If I told you it's an easy book, you should just walk out of here, right? Because you already know it's not an easy book. But I will try to make it easier, okay? So that's kind of the deal. I will try to make it easier as long as we kind of understand it's not an easy book. But here's the important thing that I need out of you. I need you to believe you can understand this book. You believe that? Ooh, not many people. All right, seriously. We have any education majors here? Got teachers here, right? Got a teacher right there, okay. Yeah, you know, they talk about in teaching this thing called self-fulfilling prophecy. And basically means if you don't believe you can learn the material, guess what? Yeah, you're going to be your own greatest enemy. Look, God didn't put this in the book to mock us, right? I mean, He wants us to understand it. Doesn't mean it's the easiest book to understand, but you have to believe we can understand it. It's just got to open yourself up to one thing, okay? What is that one thing you want to know? Well, this is kind of it. You ready? So, this is what you see if you watch a baseball game now. This will be in the lower left-hand corner usually. It's just kind of the score box. So this tells you that Tampa Bay is playing Oakland. Oakland is the home team because it is the bottom. See this little arrow down here? Bottom of the first. That's what that means. Oakland is batting. There's 2 outs. They have the bases loaded. They're all colored in yellow, so the bases are loaded. This gentleman named Profar is batting. He's the 6th batter. He's only batting .218, which not the guy you want up when the bases are loaded, but anyway. Tampa Bay has already scored in their part of the inning. The P. Morton means that's the pitcher, and he has thrown 27 pitches. You didn't know all that information was up there, did you? Some of you did, of course. So what happened? Well, surprise, I walked into the world of baseball and said, yeah, teach me how to speak baseball. So there you go. All right, so if you're not a baseball fan, let's try a few more. So how about the Marvel universe? We got people here? Come on. Just don't want to raise their hand. Okay. But I know we got people here, and you know all those characters you see on the screen, and if you've seen all those movies, it just seems like there's been 50 of them, but anyway. But what is that? That's a world you walk into. And if you're interested, you walk into that world, and pretty soon, man, you're talking with your Marvel friend about, you know, all these different people. Okay, so if you're not Marvel, let's go the other way, okay? How about Downton Abbey? How many? Oh, see, Marvel people, they're not ashamed, okay? By the way, if you think it's Downtown Abbey, you are not that You are not in the world yet. So this was a real famous series. I think they've popped out a couple movies in the last year, so it's still kind of out there. But again, you know, if you want to walk into that world, you can. So anyway, that's a world you can walk into. Or let's go to something different. Let's go to something more basic. How about the world of Starbucks? Yeah? You know how to go up there and get your mocha chocolate-dotty or, you know, whatever that is? Yeah, because they got a whole world of stuff in there, don't they? I don't pretend to understand it, but that's a world. College students, you guys are all majoring in something, that's a world, right? Speech path, engineering, whatever it is, you had to walk into that world. And you are learning how to talk the talk and think, you know, in civil engineering terms or whatever it is. Or if you've ever learned another language, same deal, right? You have to learn, you know, to kind of enter the world of that language. And they always say that you've really mastered the language when you find yourself thinking in that language. So in all these things, we're just saying one thing. That if you're on the outside looking in, you may go, ugh, I don't know anybody in the Marvel universe. But if you allowed yourself to watch a few of the movies, pretty soon, you know, you'd be getting at least a little bit of it. That's exactly the way Revelation is. That's exactly the way it is. It's just a world that is waiting for us to walk into. Now, here's the thing. We've all had a lot of success with the New Testament world, haven't we? We've all walked into Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and that wasn't too difficult, was it? Because that's written more in story form, and man, in the West, we are great on narrative, right? We're all about the narrative. And we know Acts and the letters. We're not quite as comfortable because the letters aren't really a narrative. They're kind of strictly teaching, but still we're pretty good with that. But we get to Revelation, we're like, wait a second. You remember Sesame Street? One of these things is not like the others. Yeah, this thing is not like the others. It's not. That's why I said I can't make it easy. I can make it easier, but can't make it easy. By its nature, it's difficult because we don't live in that world. We don't speak that speech. All right, so that's what this class is all about. It's believing. If you will allow yourself to step into the world of Revelation, I'll just go ahead and say this. You're probably going to be surprised what you can learn if you just apply yourself believing that God will help you to understand this book. So here is your assignment. To read chapters 1 through 5. Yeah, you will not learn the book or walk into the world by listening to me. It's only one way to do that. You've got to get into the text. Now, I'll even make it a little easier because, right, that's my job here, to make it a little easier. I'm not so much interested in chapters 2 and 3. Those are the letters to the 7 churches. That's probably the part of Revelation you know, right? You're like, oh man, that's the part everybody preaches on and teaches on, and it's good stuff. Don't get me wrong, but that's kind of the stuff we're familiar with. We won't spend a lot of time in there. You don't really need help with that part. But if you want to just major in 3 of those 5 chapters, it's good to read all of them. But I would major in chapter 1 and then go to chapter 4 and chapter 5. Those are the ones that speak the language of Revelation. Those are the ones that they're just kind of strange to us. You know, like your spouse was when you first met them. And what did you do? You hung around them long enough, you started to appreciate that strangeness, right? And realize, oh, there's some good qualities there. Exactly the way it is with Revelation. It does seem really different when you start to read it. It is not like Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. It is not like Acts. It is not like Romans or anything New Testament. It's like a few things in the Old Testament. We'll get to that in a little bit. But just start reading it and attaching yourself to it. All right, let's get onto your sheet then. We'll probably have this sheet for a couple of weeks. So that's assignment number 2. See if you can bring this sheet back in a week. I think you can. We have a few more in case you can't, but it'd be okay to bring the one you have back. Does God care if we read the book of Revelation? What do you think? Yes. That's a no-brainer. Well, we're just doing warm-ups right now, okay? We're just stretching before we really get going. So here's chapter 1, verse 3. These are all out of the NIV, by the way. So, blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy. I'm just going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say it's okay if you want to read it silent too. It's still okay. But you can see right away this is a church context, isn't it? Blessed is the reader, the person who gets up and reads the scripture to the church. This would be the 7 churches of 2 and 3. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy. Blessed are those who hear it and take to heart what is written. So that's us now. We're in that purview. We can read it and we can take its message to heart because the time is near. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. So that's out of chapter 1, verse 3. Then here's 22, verse 7. Look, I'm coming soon. Blessed is the one who keeps the words of the prophecy written in this scroll. So kind of a behavioral, thing. Saying really the same thing, takes it to heart, keeps the words, same way of saying something, just different words. Okay, so who noticed, what did you notice about these 2 verses and where they came from? Yes, this is a test.
From the first chapter, one of the last.
Very good, Robbie Knowles. You're exempt from class time from 8:30 on, okay? All right, yeah, it's first and last. So listen, that's a big deal in the Bible. They do it all the time. If you want to really dazzle your friends, what'd you learn in Revelation tonight? We learned about an inclusio, okay? Yeah, that's a Latin word, but you can hear include, can't you? Include, inclusio. All an inclusio is 2 bookends, so at the beginning of the book, at the end of the book. So that's a way of emphasizing something, right? You remember back when we used to write letters to people? No, you don't remember that, but anyway, when you're texting, maybe. You say something at the beginning, you say it at the end. What's the point? That's the point. I want to make sure you get this. So I said it at the beginning, I said it at the end. You really should get that. So you find that a lot in Scripture. Paul, Romans 1 will talk about, he wants to see the obedience of faith of all the nations in Romans 1. Gets to 16, throws it out again. I'm an apostle in order to bring about the obedience of the nations, the obedience of faith in all the nations. Inclusio. So what's he trying to do? One of the Psalms, a lot of the Psalms have that. First verse will say something, the last verse will say something. And what do you think the Psalm's about when it does that? Whatever the first and last verse say, right? That's just an expansion on that. So that's kind of something to look for when you see that kind of thing going on. So one other point real quick, the real easy one, God cares about Revelation because he put it in a book for us, right? So if it's there, there's a reason. All right, why do you think people have so much trouble understanding Revelation? What's that? The language? Fair enough. Not everyday language, not even everyday biblical language. Where is this language from, by the way? Where else do we find this in the Bible? Daniel and Ezekiel and most of what we call the 12, the minor prophets. Yeah, they speak that kind of language. That's not our real strong point, is it, the prophets? So that's why we struggle in Revelation. If we understood the prophets, especially Daniel, Daniel's really the prequel to Revelation. So language, what else? What's that? Huh? Symbol, okay. Language, different kind of thing. How about this? You ever heard maybe different understandings of Revelation? A few thousand, right? Yeah. You know, oh, Revelation says this, or it says that, or, you know, the earthquake we had the other day, that's in Revelation chapter 17. You know, so you hear a lot of things about it, but that's the way it works, right? Because we're not generally knowledgeable, we can be taken, can't we? Because we don't know. I don't know. Not sure what it says. So lots of reasons why we struggle with Revelation. Now the important thing, like I said, is to realize, okay, fair enough. We all have some difficulties with it. Can we understand it? Is God mocking us? Well, no, He's not mocking us. We can understand it, so we just believe that, and we slowly step into that world of Revelation. All right, whoa, let's go back here a little bit. I sort of don't like this, but I also found it kind of necessary. I don't like saying Revelation is like a jigsaw puzzle, because then you're just like, wow, God really made that hard. We can't just open it up and read it and understand it. It's this 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle we have to put together. That's not what I'm after. What I'm after is, if you do work a jigsaw puzzle, what's the first thing you generally do? You do the frame, right? Yeah. And you do the frame because you establish some boundaries. You know, you get those pieces made and you know, okay, still a lot of pieces left, but they all go inside here. And I've got the boundaries and yeah, ready to work. Well, let me suggest that John does exactly that in what we're going to talk about tonight and probably next week as well. John helps us to construct the frame to Revelation. And it's just like a puzzle. Once you construct the frame, you're kind of in business. You've got a lot of the puzzle, you know, positively dealt with. So he provides the framework for understanding Revelation. All right, so real quick, who wrote it? We're still warming up. This is John. And we know that because he says he made it known by sending his angel to his servant John. I think it's the Apostle John. Most people do, but of course, if you look long enough, you can find somebody who doesn't think it's John. I'm not interested in getting into all that. You can thrash it out on your own. There's only one person I know in the ancient biblical world in the first century who could write to Christians and say John, right? Nothing more. John. Who's that? Well, it's the Apostle John. So I think when everything is said and done, it gets down to that. He is by far the most probable person to have written it. To whom is Revelation addressed? John, to the 7 churches in the province of Asia. And Asia in biblical times is what we call Turkey today, or Asia Minor even. Not Asia like China, that kind of thing, more Asia Minor. If you look at the map there, so this is, there we go. So this is Asia Minor, then this is Antioch, so this is Cyprus, so right down the coast is Jerusalem, and then Egypt's below that. So there's the Mediterranean Sea and the Mediterranean Bowl, you know, and all the land that goes around it. So that's where Asia was, that's where these 7 churches were. You can tell they're all in fairly close proximity, right? Not terribly far from each other. Why is this important? Why is this part of the framework? Well, because that's who John was writing to. I haven't said this in a while, but it's a good thing to keep in mind. There's 66 books in the Bible, and they were all written to somebody else, right? None of them were written to us. They were all written for us, in the sense that we can read them and benefit tremendously. But there's no book where it says to the church at 10th Street, right? It'd be cool for us, but there's not one. But it's for us. But still, we need to recognize that it was written to 7 real churches in Asia Minor. These are not symbolic churches. Chapter 2 and 3, right? They got good things going on, they got not so good things, but they're human beings, they're real people, and that's who John is writing this to. So that's really, I think, going to prove to be a very important part of that frame. All right, so what does the author have to say about the book's time context? This is the big deal about Revelation, right? Has it been fulfilled? When was it fulfilled? Is it still to be fulfilled? And everybody and his brother's got a different answer for you. So, I got a neat idea. Why don't we see what John has to say about? That'd probably be the way to go in this, wouldn't it? Does John say anything about the time context? We already know he's writing to 7 churches in the first century. So here we are in chapter 1, verse 1. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. Not difficult to understand, right? And again, anchor that in the context. He's writing 7 churches of his time, contemporary. So church is going to get that scroll. They're going to have an assembly. Some guy's going to get up there who's probably got a nice voice, reads well, and he's going to read that scroll of Revelation to that church of Asia. And they're going to hear, blessed are they're going to hear the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. So if you're hearing this in the first century, and I think we'll get into the date later on, but 80 AD, 79, something like that, and you hear something's going to soon take place, you think you're going to slap your brother on the back on the way out and go, "Don't worry, Brother Simon, this stuff's not going to happen for another 20 centuries. Think everybody's going to say that? Well, it'd be hard, wouldn't it? But let's keep going because we got a few more verses. Now, this is 2 verses later. Blessed is the one who reads the words of this prophecy. Blessed are those who hear it, take it to heart, what is written in it, because the time is near. So we've had that twice in 3 verses now. So kind of looks like he might be emphasizing this. You know, don't miss this point. You know, this stuff's very near. All right, so that's chapter 1:1. That's 1:3, and here we go to the other end of the book. What's that word we were using for this kind of stuff? Inclusio. So here's another inclusio. The angel said to me, "These words are trustworthy and true. The Lord, the God of the spirits of the prophets, sent his angel to show his servants the things that must soon take place." And again, kind of appreciating this idea of the inclusio, you can just see John's making this concerted effort to, hey, I want to make sure they get that up front. Then after I've gone through everything I've gone through in Revelation, and man, that's a lot of stuff. I just want to put it at the end to make sure, just to make sure they understand. We got parents in the audience, right? You do this stuff all the time. Your little darling is going off to camp. They're going to the ball game. What do? You give them the list. We all know the list. Usually at the top of the list is the first thing. Okay, I want you to make good choices tonight, if that's your number one. And then you tell them a few other things. Make sure you call me if it's going to such time. And then heading out the door, you may just go, make sure to make good choices tonight. You just inclusioed your kid, didn't you? Yeah. Hey, that's perfectly fair thing to do. People have been doing it for thousands of years. So we're not surprised we run across it in writing. So, man, John's so hard on this, he's going to do it one more time just in case. You didn't get this. So he told me, don't seal up the words of the prophecy of this book because the time is near. So, wow. Yeah. So that's pretty clear, isn't it? I mean, this is the part of Revelation, the framework we're doing right now. And this is just not that difficult to understand. And listen, I've got some commentaries by people who don't understand this. And when they get to this part, they usually have very little to say. Or they might say something like, well, with God, 1,000 years is like a day, right? But God's not writing to himself, right? He's writing to 7 churches in Asia. So he's not speaking like that. He's speaking to humans in human terms. And he tells them 4 times, hey, this stuff's getting ready to happen. Any questions about that, thoughts, anything like that? It's just kind of a fundamental point. We're not really going to spend much more time on it other than what we said here. So has everybody kind of got that? What's that?
Am I jumping ahead? You said he's writing to 7 churches in Asia Minor.
Right.
Well, it says it's going to happen right now. Is that to them?
Well, what do you think? Who's he writing to?
Them?
And what's he tell them?
He says it's going to happen.
See? She has taken 2 or 3 steps into the world right there. And now how hard? That wasn't hard, was it? Well, again, that's pretty simple. Now, I'm not saying everything in Revelation is that simple, okay? But we're putting the frame together. The frame is a little easier, right? Because it's got the, the flat ends on it. So, yeah, that part's a little easier. But, yeah, that's the gist of it. All right. Yeah.
Could we say something about when John wrote this Revelation? Can we say it was close to the end of the first century?
We'll get into all that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know you're ready for it. Rufus wants to take a few more steps, but we gotta cover a few things real quick. So John's 4 statements to his first century audience all say the same thing. The time is near. So listen, a futuristic interpretation is just what it sounds like. We think it hasn't been fulfilled. While the problem with that is you're arguing with John, aren't you? You're not arguing with me or somebody else. I mean, John's told you 4 times in about as clear language as you can get that, hey, this stuff's going to happen soon. So God's spoken and you can know what he said. Listen, that's true from Genesis to Revelation. Sometimes you have to work a little bit more to understand what he said. But when you reach that understanding level, there's nothing wrong with going, hey, just what John said. That's what the word says. All right. We got a few minutes to move into the language framework, and this is important. So we celebrated the step we took. We're going to take one more step tonight, and we'll kind of take half a step because we'll probably pick up here next week. Okay, the revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. He made it. Revelation, by the way, is apocalypse. That's the Greek word. Apocalypse. You hear people talk about the apocalypse of John. That's just the Greek word for revelation. But think about this. Think about this. Revelation. He didn't say the obscure message God gave his servants. He said the revelation. So the idea behind apocalypse is like, we've all seen these art exhibits, right? Or maybe somebody has crafted a statue of some kind, and you go to the opening and they have something over the statue, right? You can't see exactly what it is, but there's something under there. You can see some points and projections and things like that, and then whew, they unveil it, and then you see it. That's the thrust behind this word, apocalypse, revelation. So we're either going to have to start believing that or come up with another name for the book, but that's what John called it, the revelation. So that ought to encourage us. All right, the other thing I want to go to is the next to last line where he says, he made it known. He made it known. Now, that's just one word in the Greek. I promise you, we're not going to do a lot of Greek in here, okay? Yeah, and it's going to be really simple and straightforward because that's all I know. Made it known is from this Greek word, semeno. semeno. And here's how some other translations have translated semeno. Instead of saying made it known, they said signified it. Young's literal says did signify it. The ASV sent and signified it. So that's a little different word, isn't it, than making something known. What does signify suggest? I'm not trying to trap you, I promise. And the answer's in the word. Communicated it through signs. You signify something. That's what the word means. The New American Standard says sent and communicated it, and then NIV, I think, and ESV also say made it known. I'm not real fond of those last two, and here's why. Because this semeno is a verb, and this is the word John uses in his Gospels. When John talks about signs, you remember that? He gets to the end of his Gospel, he said, I've written many other signs Jesus performed, many other signs Jesus performed in the presence of his disciples. But these have been written down that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, and in believing you may have life. So John tells you my book has been about signs. So we've got these miracles, but they're not called miracles by John, they're called signs. What's the difference between a sign and a miracle? Anybody got any idea? Are all signs miracles? I think they are pretty much, at least in John's Gospel. Let's just go with that. Are all miracles signs? Probably not. So think with me about John's Gospel, and this will come pretty easy to us. So what's the sign there in John 6 that's on the screen? Yeah, the fish and the loaves. And it's a sign. So a sign says, you don't stand there looking at the sign. You try to understand what the sign is pointing to, right? What it signifies. That's the whole point of the sign. John the Baptist was kind of a sign for Jesus, right? He didn't want people to look at him, but the one who comes after me. So he was like this sign pointing to Jesus. So this was a sign. What was it a sign of? Well, Jesus will say, I am the what of life? Bread of life. You need a sign of that? What did I just do? Fed people with all this bread and the fish. So you get the idea. John's using the same word. He uses it in a noun form, verb in Revelation, noun in his Gospel. But it's a sign. You don't stop at the fish and loaves and go, hey, that was pretty cool. Or as one guy said, he said, I want to hang around with that group that fishes and loaves all day. I don't think he really understood, the significance of the miracle. Chapter 9, he gives the blind man sight. What's that a sign of? From chapter 8. I am the light of the world. See, you guys are getting this. You're taking another step. Yeah, so don't just look at this and go, that's pretty cool. I got his sight back. It is. It is cool. But don't stop there. It signifies something. What does it signify? Jesus is the light of the world. John 11, Lazarus comes forth. What might that signify? I am the resurrection and the life. There you go. So here's what I want you to see. You see a pattern here, don't you? You see John's throwing out these signs, and his readers aren't supposed to stop and go, oh, what a cool miracle. It was a cool miracle. But go past that. What does it signify about Jesus? So, John says then, listen, this stuff was signified to me. So if something is signified, it's not literal, right? Right? When Jesus said, I am the bread of life, was he in a plastic wrap with a twist tie over his head? No, it's not literal, but like bread, he nourishes us. He's the light of the world. He gives sight. He illuminates our sight. So John is telling us, hey, I'm signifying these things. Don't go through this book like you go through the Gospels and read it literally. That's not what I'm doing. It was signified to me, and I'm just passing on the signs. So see, this really becomes pretty simple because we're building our frame, right? And all we're doing in building the frame is just listening to what John said. Hey, the time, it's going to soon take place. I'm talking to these 7 churches in the first century. This language that's so hard to grasp because we don't know, what it means. I'm telling you at the front, I'm signifying things. I'm making symbols, okay? So that's something we really need to lock into. So you see this young lady on the screen. What is she doing? She is signing, right? So let's say her name is Marcia, because that just popped in my head for whatever reason. But we all know Marcia, and I come and tell you, hey, I saw Marcia today. What was Marcia doing? She was making known this message. That's okay, isn't it? But that's not really very enlightening or accurate. She was signing a language, wasn't it? That's how she was making it known. She was signing it. So if I really want to add clarity, that's the way I'll say it. So that's the way we need to think about John. He's told us pretty clear terms, and unfortunately not all the translators seem to get that. But he's told us, I'm signing these things for you. So, any questions about any of that? This is your time to speak. Okay. So, the other thing we'll just say, just kind of a preview for next week, that most of these signs and pictures come from where? Where do you think he gets these pictures from? Most of them come from the Old Testament, and most of them from these prophetical books. So, that's a couple of really helpful things already. We're told, number one, we see these things, we're to recognize they're signs. Don't literalize them and make them 500-pound hailstones or, all these, bizarre things these people talk about. They signify something. And if you want to know how the symbol is used, we'll kind of let the Old Testament help us in that. And I know that's not necessarily that comforting because we go, great, I don't know much of the Old Testament, but you can learn, can't you? Yeah, you can learn. It's not going to be that tough. All right, so we've really talked about 2 big things. We talked about the time element, that it's very much first century kind of thing. We've talked about the language. It is symbolic, and we'll move more into that. We haven't talked about the most important thing in Revelation yet. And the most important thing in Revelation is the hope it gave the people who received it in the first century, and the hope it can give us today. And here's the thing. I've got like the lower shelf on my bookcase just lined with books on Revelation. And I don't know hardly any of them that talk much about hope. They all get lost, in all this symbolism and stuff like that. And look, it's part of the book. You got to deal with that. But I don't really think that's what God is after. I think He wants to give His people hope. And He wants to give His people the hope that, hey, no matter what happens, and I mean that literally now, no matter what happens, nobody can separate you from the hope you have in God through Jesus Christ. Not life, not death, not anything in between. So behaviorally, we don't have to give in. We don't have to surrender. We don't have to say, well, I can't do it. Yeah, you can. Just hold on to God. Look at the hope He's given you. William Nevins Ducat, you can see the dates up there. 1972 to 1977. Billy was 5 years old when he died. He had Burkitt's lymphoma. And, you know, most of his life he had that, a rough time with it. And he went all over the United States, you know, trying to get cured from it. He ended up in Boston's Children's Hospital. Billy and his family were from Albuquerque, New Mexico. So basically, you know, other end of the United States. So he's there at Boston Children's Hospital. They did everything they could for him. And then they reached the point where they said, you know, there's just not anything more we can do for Billy. And his parents, they had kind of seen this coming, and they said, well, you know, just want to thank you for everything we did. And we want to take Billy back to Albuquerque. You know, we want him to die there at his home with his family, with his friends, you know, where he's from. Problem with that was he was really bad off. You know, not really fit to travel. There was a pediatric resident there named Dr. Hope Druckman. And Dr. Druckman said, you know what, I'll fly with Billy and I'll take care of him. So that was the plan. So they pull out of the airport in Boston. The first leg, they fly down to Dallas. They have changed planes in Dallas, so they get off the first one. They're getting ready to get on the second plane, and the crew, you know, they assess you when you get on. You may not know that, but yes, they do. And they see the shape Billy's in. They say, look, we're just real sorry, but, you know, we can't take him on our plane. Well, yeah, how tough is that? All this family wants to do is get Billy back home. So they go to a hospital there in Dallas. Dr. Druckman contacts the Air Force. For 2 hours, she's on the phone trying to get Billy medevac from Dallas to Albuquerque, but in the end, it just didn't work out. She's about to just give up on everything when somebody comes up to her at the hospital. It's 1 o'clock in the morning now, and they say, hey, there is a doctor on staff here. He's got a little private plane. Won't you give him a call? So I mean, like 2 seconds later, she's dialed the number. She's talking to this guy, and God bless him. He says, "Yeah, I'll go out there right now, fuel up the plane, and you know I'll be glad to take him back." He said, "But my plane is too small, so it can just be me, you, and Billy. The family will have to fly back some other way." So she goes and tells the family. They get the commercial flight. They all rendezvous. They all rendezvous down there in Albuquerque. They get Billy to a hospital. He's there for a little while, and he's just as peaceful as he can be. And all of his friends and all of his family are there when he passes away. So what you see on the screen is the grave marker for Billy Ducotte. The rest of it says 4 words: hope brought him home. And that's Dr. Druckman, Dr. Hope Druckman. Because the family recognized, this lady did it. See, that's exactly the theme of Revelation. You know what's going to bring us home? Hope is going to bring us home. Like I said, it'll get us through life, it'll get us through death, it'll get us through everything in between. And that's really the story we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at the story of our first century family. And we're going to see, man, they were up against the wall in ways we can't even imagine. And John wants them to know, above everything else, man, in Jesus Christ you have hope, and hope will bring you home. Let's pray together. Lord, thank you for bringing us here tonight. Thank you for the book of Revelation. We freely acknowledge, Father, it's a challenge for us, and we need your help to open our eyes and to open our hearts and minds to understand it. Father, help us to do our part and to take those steps into this world, just a few at a time. And most of all, Lord, I just pray that we will catch hold of this great hope that you have for us, that is anchored in Jesus Christ, in his life and his glorious resurrection. Father, help that to drive our life and to embolden us to live fully for you. We ask these things all in your Son's name. Amen. All right, so next week, I think I got it, maybe not. Oh well, chapters 1 through 5. And give special emphasis to 1, 4, and 5. Oh, I don't have it there. All right, appreciate everybody's attention.